The Grand Assembly Hall, hub of the galactic conclave, pulsed with a symphony of alien tongues. It was a kaleidoscopic chaos, a testament to the sheer diversity thriving, or perhaps merely surviving, within the spiral arms of the known galaxy. Holographic projections flickered and shimmered, displaying trade routes, planetary maps, and the latest advancements in xenobiology. The air, meticulously filtered and regulated, carried the faint, competing scents of everything from crystalline minerals to fermented fungal delicacies. Here, under the dome of shimmering energy that mimicked 1,000 suns, representatives from over 100 star systems convened to navigate the intricate dance of interstellar politics. Peace, trade, resource allocation, and the ever-present threat of galactic war, all were threads woven into the tapestry of diplomacy that unfolded within these hallowed halls. For those accustomed to the grandeur of established empires, the conclave was a necessary evil, a place to tolerate the lesser civilizations while securing their own interests. For the smaller systems, however, it was the fulcrum upon which their very existence balanced, the only place where a single voice could, in theory, challenge the might of interstellar leviathans. It was precisely this delicate balance that Ambassador Eris of the Scald Galaxy System was tasked to uphold. The weight of his people's future, a weight far exceeding his slight frame, pressed down on him as he hurried through the crowded corridors, his breath coming in short, anxious gasps. Eris was late. Terribly, unforgivably late. A cascading series of technical malfunctions on his antiquated transport, the Scaldus Whisper, had delayed their arrival by several hours. The navigational anomalies near the uncharted fringes of their galaxy system had also posed a challenge. Each second he felt a sharp pang of anxiety. He had wanted to make a good first impression. His diminutive stature didn't help matters. Standing barely 4 feet tall, even among the more modestly sized delegates, Eris felt like a child lost in a throng of towering adults. His scald physique, honed by the harsh gravity and unforgiving climate of his homeworld, appeared wiry and almost fragile compared to the imposing forms of Cthar warriors or the sleek, bioengineered elegance of the Cygnus Collective representatives. His clothing did little to alleviate the situation. The practical, woven garments of the Scald, crafted from the hardy fibers of luminescent flora and dyed with natural pigments, seemed almost laughably plain compared to the shimmering synth silk robes and gravity-defying armor worn by others. Even their technology, while efficient and reliable in the Scald system's demanding environment, appeared primitive and outdated in the conclave's gleaming halls. He could almost hear the whispers and stifled laughter as the more established delegates glanced at his entourage. The Scald Galaxy System was a place of windswept mesas and towering peaks, a region teeming with life and resources hidden beneath a veneer of apparent desolation. 3 harsh suns beat down upon its handful of habitable worlds, baking the land and driving life to adapt or perish. The Scald, a resilient and resourceful people, had carved a life for themselves in this challenging environment, mastering the art of sustainable living and honoring the spirit of their harsh but beautiful home. Their culture, deeply intertwined with nature, revolved around the Scald, individuals who were poets, musicians, and warriors in equal measure. Skilled in combat, artistry, and storytelling, the Scald were revered as the keepers of their people's history and the guardians of their traditions. But none of that seemed to matter here, in the heart of the galactic conclave. Here, size, power, and technological prowess seemed to be the only metrics of worth. "Apologies," Eris stammered, addressing the stern-faced official stationed at the main entrance of the assembly hall. The official, a towering, bio-augmented being from the Volkov Collective, barely glanced down at him. "We encountered unforeseen delays. The session has already begun, Ambassador," the Volkov official said, his voice a synthesized growl that rumbled through Eris's bones. "You and your delegation will be seated in the designated area. Ensure you remain silent and do not disrupt the proceedings." Eris bowed his head, his heart sinking further. "Understood," he mumbled, ushering his small delegation forward. He had to get this right. One wrong move and there might be severe consequences. As they moved into the vast hall, the cacophony of the conclave washed over them. The delegates, representing countless species, were clustered in small groups, engaged in intense negotiations and heated debates. Glimmers of exotic skin, the rustle of alien fabrics, and the flashes of energy weapons painted a breathtaking, if slightly overwhelming, scene. Eris, however, was hardly noticed. Many disregarded them, or even stared at them with a hint of distaste. A ripple of unease spread through the crowd as a towering figure strode into the center of the hall. High Commander Zargoth of the Kthar Empire, a being whose very presence radiated power and aggression. His molten skin, the color of cooled lava, shimmered in the holographic light. Jagged horns protruded from his forehead, and his eyes glowed with an unsettling, predatory intensity. He was a monument to brute force, a symbol of an empire built on conquest. Zargoth moved with an arrogant swagger, his every step echoing through the hall. When he stopped in front of the Skald delegation, he let out a bellowing laugh that sent shivers down Eris's spine. "Well, well," Zargoth boomed, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate the very foundations of the hall. "Look what the tide dragged in. The Skald, finally gracing us with their presence." Eris stood his ground, trying to maintain his composure despite the heat rising in his cheeks. He had anticipated this, prepared for it, but the reality of Zargoth's contempt was even more overwhelming than he had imagined. "High Commander," Eris replied, his voice trembling slightly, "we apologize for our tardiness. Circumstances beyond our control." Zargoth cut him off with a wave of his massive hand, the gesture dismissive and insulting. "Save your excuses, little one. We all know the Skald have nothing of value to offer this conclave. Your technology is antiquated, your warriors are negligible, and your resources are barely enough to sustain your own pathetic system." The Kthar leader paused, letting his gaze sweep over the Skald delegation, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "What, I ask you, can a civilization so insignificant possibly contribute to the galaxy?" Eris felt a surge of anger, a fierce protectiveness of his people. He wanted to lash out, to defend his home, to remind Zargoth of the Skald's achievements. But he knew that a rash reaction would only play into the Kthar's hands, giving them the excuse they needed to seize Skald for their own. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm. "High Commander," he said, his voice regaining some composure. "The Skald may be small, but we are resilient. We may not have advanced weaponry or vast fleets, but we have ingenuity and creativity. We have a deep understanding of our environment and a commitment to sustainable living. We believe that we can contribute to the galaxy in ways that go beyond brute force and conquest." Zargoth roared with laughter, his molten skin rippling with amusement. "Ingenuity? Creativity? You speak of trinkets while empires are built on power. What use is a song when the Kthar Empire comes to claim what is rightfully ours?" The threat was clear, spoken aloud for all the conclave to hear. It was a direct challenge, an open declaration of intent. Eris knew that he was standing on the precipice of disaster, a single word away from plunging his people into a war they could not possibly win. Just as Eris steeled himself to respond, to find a way to defuse the situation, a new voice cut through the tension. "Perhaps," a clear, strong voice rang out, "there is more to strength than meets the eye, High Commander." All eyes turned to see Captain Elara Vance, the Earthling officer, stepping forward. The silence following High Commander Zargoth's pronouncements hung heavy in the Grand Assembly Hall, thick with unspoken threats and barely suppressed anxiety. Ambassador Eris felt the weight of 1,000 stares, each one a judgment passed on his people, his culture, his very existence. It was a familiar feeling, one etched into the history of the Skald, a constant shadow lurking beneath the surface of their interactions with the galaxy beyond their remote system. But this time, something felt different. This time, the stakes were higher, the danger more palpable. Zargoth's declaration had not been a mere insult. It was a prelude to conquest, a chilling promise of subjugation. A figure moved into the circle of light surrounding Eris, breaking the oppressive stillness. The Earthling captain, Elara Vance, her uniform a stark contrast to the ornate regalia of the galactic elite. She possessed a quiet confidence, a steeliness in her gaze that belied her relatively youthful appearance. She didn't tower over Eris as Zargith did, yet her presence seemed to fill the space with an undeniable force. Elara Vance was a rising star within the Alliance fleet, a name whispered with respect and a hint of apprehension among the corridors of power. Her reputation preceded her. Known for her strategic brilliance, her unwavering moral compass, and her uncanny ability to anticipate enemy movements, Elara was a force to be reckoned with, even within the vastness of the galactic military. Perhaps, Elara's voice cut through the lingering tension, clear and resonant. There is more to strength than meets the eye, High Commander. Zargitha's molten gaze snapped towards Elara, his expression hardening. Earthling, he growled, his voice dripping with disdain. Interfere in Kthar business, and you will find yourself regretting it. Elara stood her ground, her blue eyes unwavering as she met Zargitha's fiery stare. High Commander, I simply wish to express my belief that every civilization, regardless of size or technological advancement, has a right to be heard at this conclave. The pursuit of dialogue, the exchange of ideas, isn't something to be mocked, but cherished, valued, and defended. It's what we're supposed to be doing in this hall. Zargith sneered, the lines around his molten eyes deepening. Sentimentality is a weakness, Earthling. The galaxy understands only power. Perhaps, Elara countered, a faint smile playing on her lips. You misunderstand what true power is, High Commander. Sometimes it's about knowing when not to use it. The tension in the hall ratcheted up, the air crackling with unspoken threats. Eris watched with bated breath, his heart pounding in his chest. A conflict between the Kthar Empire and the Alliance fleet would be a disaster of unimaginable proportions, and he was caught in the middle. Before Zargith could respond, Elara turned her attention to Eris, her gaze softening. She offered a slight, respectful nod. Ambassador Eris, she said, her voice gentle but firm. I apologize for the High Commander's lack of diplomatic tact. Please proceed with your presentation. I assure you, you have my full attention. With a final, steely glance at Zargith, Elara strode towards the seating area reserved for the Alliance fleet delegation, leaving the Kthar leader seething with barely suppressed rage. Eris took a shaky breath, trying to regain his composure. He glanced at Elara, a silent expression of gratitude etched on his face. He knew, instinctively, that her intervention had changed everything. The insult had been delivered, but it had been met with courage and defiance, a challenge to the very core of Zargitha's beliefs. As Eris prepared to speak, he knew that the task ahead of him was more difficult, more dangerous than ever before. But he also knew that he was no longer alone. The echoes of Zargitha's words lingered in the Grand Hall, heavy with the threat of a conflict that stretched beyond mere trade disputes. As Elara sat down, a flurry of memories flashed through her mind, fragments of a past she usually kept tightly locked away. The faces of people she had failed to save, the echo of explosions that had stolen her innocence, the weight of responsibility that had shaped her into the captain she was today. Back in the relative calm of their designated chambers, Eris and Elara huddled amidst holographic displays depicting Scandalous binary star system. The practical, almost Spartan accommodations served as a sharp contrast to the opulent extravagance of the Grand Assembly Hall, a reminder of the Scandalous resourcefulness. The High Commander of the Kthar has formally demanded a trial of merit for the right to Skeld recognition. It is, as tradition dictates, a test for Eris to prove her worth, Eris said grimly, the gravity of the situation etched on his small features. I was wrong, it seems as though war might indeed be inevitable. Elara frowned. A trial of merit? What exactly does that entail? Eris sighed, his gaze drifting towards a small, intricately carved wooden instrument resting on a table. It is an ancient custom, a legacy of the Skald warriors of old. When faced with a seemingly insurmountable challenge, a champion would undertake a series of trials designed to test their strength, their intellect, and their spirit. It is, in essence, the test of whether a member of the Skald is worthy of living or not. He activated the holodisplay, and a series of ancient symbols flickered to life, accompanied by a haunting melody that resonated through the chamber. These are the glyphs that define the Song of Trials, a ritual as old as Skald itself. It is not easy nor humane. The first step requires strength and skill. But qua Bao saw, they must cross the starstorm. Eris gestured to the projections, which shifted to show a planet being pummeled by a deadly storm. The second demands intellect, Jai Ma Mat Ma Ko. The codes are not only complicated, but could be booby-trapped, and there is no room for errors. The third, Tin then the final test, he added solemnly, is always the hardest. We have to go to the most terrifying place ever, and there is only one exit. Elara studied the holodisplay with growing concern. These trials sound incredibly dangerous, Ambassador. Are you certain that you are willing to risk this? Eris looked at her, his eyes reflecting the light of the ancient glyphs. I have no choice, Captain. The fate of my people hangs in the balance. If I refuse, the Kthar will take it as a sign of weakness, and they will descend upon Skald like locusts. He paused, his voice tinged with a mix of determination and resignation. Perhaps it is foolish, perhaps it is suicide. But it is the only path left open to us. Before Elara could respond, a new voice cut through the silence. I will do it. Lyra stepped forward, her small figure radiating an unexpected strength. Her violet eyes, usually filled with a gentle curiosity, burned with a fierce determination. Eris turned to her, his expression a mix of surprise and worry. Lyra, no! This is too dangerous. You are a princess, not a warrior. The fate of our planet cannot rest upon your shoulders. Father, Lyra replied, her voice firm but respectful. I am Skald. And I am your daughter. If someone must undertake this challenge, it should be me. She turned to Elara, her gaze unwavering. Captain Vance, I accept your offer. I will face the Song of Trials. With your help, I will prove to the galaxy that the Skald are not to be underestimated. Elara looked at Lyra, her eyes filled with admiration. Then let us begin, Princess, she said, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. Let us show them what you are truly made of. The decision was made, the gauntlet thrown. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity as Elara and Eris prepared Lyra for the challenges ahead. Elara. The planetary data suggests the starstorm is particularly unstable this cycle. We need to maximize your shielding, minimize exposure time. Eris. I have contacted the Skald engineers. They're working on modifications to your flight suit as we speak. It will provide limited protection, but it will be enough to increase your chances of survival. Elara. I am running simulations, but it is impossible to know for sure what the aliens could have been thinking about at that time. We must have a plan. Elara, watching Lyra. Remember, speed and agility are your greatest assets. Use the terrain to your advantage, stay out of reach, and strike when they least expect it. Eris. The ancient glyphs are not merely symbols, but keys to understanding the universe, for when the planet has a civilization that doesn't last, we should always look at how they are. The more they prepared, the more they realized the dangers they were all undertaking. But as they got closer, so did they. Trust between them grew. The Grand Assembly Hall, already a simmering cauldron of galactic tensions, became noticeably colder as word spread of Lyra's undertaking. The delegates who had once dismissed Eris and the Skald as insignificant now looked upon them with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Many whispered behind their hands, questioning the wisdom of allowing a child to undertake such a dangerous trial, and even more questioned the motives of the Earthling captain who was so openly supporting her. Delegate 1. A test of merit? What a charade! The only thing these little Skald will prove is their own insignificance. Delegate 2. The Earthling is meddling where she doesn't belong. This conclave is about diplomacy, not foolish heroics. Elara intercepted many stares from those on Earth's fleet and allies. They were giving her the eye like, what are you doing? This, however, did not deter Elara at all. The Kthar Empire, in particular, was openly hostile. Zargoth had made no secret of his disdain for the Skald, and he saw Elara's involvement as a direct challenge to his authority. On several occasions, he and his entourage confronted Lyra and Eris, showering them with insults and threats. Zargoth. Earthling, Are you truly willing to risk the wrath of the Kthar Empire for this pet project of yours? You are playing a dangerous game. Elara stepped in front of Lyra, her eyes burning with defiance. I am simply ensuring that a member of this conclave receives a fair chance, High Commander. I would do the same for any system that is threatened by injustice. Zargus smirked, his molten skin rippling. You are wasting your time. The Skald are weak, and weakness has no place in this galaxy. Their fate is sealed. But the hostility was not limited to the Kthar Empire. Many delegates from other powerful systems shared Zargutha's view, seeing the Skald as a nuisance, a waste of resources, and a threat to the established order. Even some of Earth's allies were concerned. It was clear that Elara was not being appreciated for meddling with the Skalds, but instead drawing negative attention to the delegation as a whole. General Elara, I understand your sympathy for the Skald, but you need to tread carefully. You are risking our standing within the Alliance. We cannot afford to antagonize the Kthar Empire. Elara. But sir, are we just going to stand by and let them bully a smaller civilization? General. This is politics, Captain, not a battlefield. Sometimes the greater good requires compromise. Elara stood her ground, even as doubt crept into her mind. Was she doing the right thing? Was she risking everything for a cause that was doomed to fail? She looked at Lyra, saw the determination in her violet eyes, and knew that she could not abandon her now. I am not here to make friends, but to make a change, she had told her superior. But I believe that the rules of this galaxy need to change. And that the Skald, and Lyra, can play a vital role in that. The transport ship, a battered but reliable vessel called the Aurora, shuddered violently as it approached the atmosphere-less planet Xylos. Lyra, strapped into the cockpit, gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white. Brace yourself, Princess. Elara's voice crackled over the comms. We're about to enter the starstorm. Outside, the darkness was suddenly ripped apart by streaks of blinding light. Chunks of rock, ice, and metal, accelerated to incredible speeds by the planet's magnetic field, tore through the void like celestial shrapnel. Lyra swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. The holographic simulations had been terrifying, but nothing could have prepared her for the sheer intensity of the real thing. Remember your training, Lyra, Elara said, her voice calm and steady. Use your sensors, anticipate the patterns, and trust your instincts. You are Skald. You can do this. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath and drawing strength from Elara's words. Then, she opened her eyes and plunged the Aurora into the heart of the storm. What followed was a harrowing dance of skill and precision. Lyra piloted the ship through the chaotic ballet, using every ounce of her Skald agility and resourcefulness to avoid the deadly debris. She dodged asteroids the size of transport ships, weaved through streams of superheated plasma, and narrowly avoided collisions with rogue satellites. But as the Skeldess ship moved forward, it was hit harder and harder by the space debris. Her protective gear had gotten completely shattered. The ship shook violently as a chunk of ice slammed into the shields, causing the energy readings to plummet. Damage to the port shield generator! Elara's voice crackled with urgency. Lyra, you need to reroute power to the shields, or you won't make it! Lyra gritted her teeth, her hands flying across the controls. She had to make a choice, sacrifice power to the engines to bolster the shields, or maintain speed and risk being torn apart by the storm. Knowing what she needed to do, Lyra rerouted the energy towards the shields instead. She closed her eyes, said a prayer, and charged forward. With an amazing sense of reflex, Lyra steered the ship away from colliding with another huge asteroid. The ship rattled, and she could see bits and pieces of her ship flying around, but she had made it through the storm. The air in the ship was silent as Lyra took a breath, only to be broken through a call on her communicator. Lyra, this is Elara. Do you read me? Lyra! Elara's voice was filled with terror. I'm here, Lyra replied. The ship is badly damaged, but I'm okay. With the physical trial complete, Lyra had proven that despite her small size, her people possessed unmatched resilience and courage. However, as Elara knew all too well, the trials ahead would be even more challenging, demanding not just strength, but cunning, wisdom, and the ability to inspire others. Would Lyra be able to meet these demands? Would the two women even have a chance to make it? The fate of the Skeld, and perhaps the galaxy itself, now rested on the shoulders of an unlikely heroine and her untested faith in the power of cooperation. The sterile white chamber hummed with a low, almost imperceptible energy. Holographic glyphs, swirling and shifting like cosmic dust, covered the walls. This was the archive, a virtual recreation of the lost libraries of the Zithri, a civilization that had vanished millennia ago, leaving behind only whispers and fragments of their knowledge scattered across the galaxy. "Welcome, Lyra!" Eris stood before a massive console. His voice echoed slightly through the chamber. The Zithri were a people obsessed with knowledge, with recording everything. But to get through their complex and extensive coding system, you will need to search for very specific things. Elara's holographic form shimmered beside them. "I've managed to translate the basic framework of their code. It's based on a complex interplay of symbols, mathematics, and music, a language far beyond our understanding." The challenge was daunting. Lyra knew that success hinged not just on her intelligence, but on her understanding of galactic history, xenolinguistics, and even the lost art of astral harmonics. This, it would prove, was more than just a test of intellect, but the value of their cultures and traditions. "The Kthar can be stopped if you do not prove yourself a match." Lyra thought of a time as the daughter of the Skald and knew what to do. "We need to understand the structure of the code," Lyra said. "Where should we begin, Father Eris?" "There are many areas," Eris responded. "However, I can already think of the first test we need. The trial to find a song. Each code is an abstract version of certain music that tells a story, so we should start at the origin of these codes." The journey through the Zithri archive was a descent into the collective mind of a vanished civilization. Lyra navigated through endless corridors filled with shimmering data streams, ancient texts, and holographic projections of long-dead scholars. Elara guided her through the complex layers of code, while Eris provided insights into the Zithri culture and their unique way of perceiving the universe. "I've found something," Elara said. "A section marked Songs of Creation. It seems to detail their beliefs about the origins of the universe." Lyra stared at the display, a series of intricate symbols swirling before her eyes. "This is it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "This is the foundation of the Zithri code." Days turned into nights as Lyra, Elara, and Eris toiled in the virtual archive, their minds racing to keep pace with the complexity of the Zithri language. The more they progressed, the more they were challenged to. They found that many of the records that had been used were booby-trapped and destroyed many who were trying to find them. With the help of Elara, Lyra was able to bypass these, but with only a few scratches. But their persistence paid off. Slowly but surely, they began to decipher the code, unlocking secrets that had been buried for millennia. The next stage of the Song of Trials was far more daunting. A wave of energy washed over her, and her vision blurred before re-emerging to a world of shadows, filled with eerie, distorted echoes of the past. The chamber seemed to shift and morph around her. Her mind was being attacked with horrific memories that were all too real. In the world created, Lyra saw before her father on a battlefield as the Skald were nearly all wiped out in the battle for protection. "Remember, Lyra," the echo of her father said. "Never put your people in danger for any reason." Lyra's resolve wavered. Doubt crept into her mind, gnawing at her confidence. Was she truly worthy of leading her people? Was she strong enough to bear the burden of their future? She had never lost in a real fight, but as memories of her former mistakes replayed before her mind, she was faltering to get over herself. "I am not the daughter you always hoped for," Lyra told him softly. "I'm too curious. I'm reckless. I've failed before." But at this moment, Elara appeared. Elara knew about the events that had happened because she had had the chance to speak with Eris and learn about Lyra's life. As Lyra collapsed, Elara rushed to her. Lyra spoke to her mind, and let the memories play through before her. Her strength in fighting the battle she could never beat gave Lyra strength. In the moment she could finally release the doubts and she regained herself, she turned to face the door which was the door out, and walked forward and out. The physical trial complete, Lyra had proven that despite her small size, her people possessed unmatched intelligence and their unique insight into the universe. The day after she came back, and had completed the 3 trials, Lyra rushed over to Alara as she had promised she would be able to meet her in person. Lyra rushed over to her with a beaming smile. Alara, I cannot thank you enough, and I am truly sorry that you could not see me personally take the trials. What matters isn't that, what matters is what we can now do, Alara replied. It is an amazing experience to meet with you. I cannot tell you how proud I am of your accomplishments. Lyra looked at Alara gratefully. I still cannot believe what has happened, but to truly express my gratitude, please allow me to show you around the conclave. Maybe we can enjoy some of their festivities for a bit. That would be wonderful. There is still so much to see. As the two began walking through the world, they began sharing and expressing more about the differences they had. Lyra about her life, her childhood, her relationship with her father and her goals. Whereas Alara shared more about her home, of Earth, that the people wanted to create an ecosystem in which the galaxy could thrive. They discovered that they had much more in common than what they initially thought, and that their cultures were much more similar than different. They discussed the politics within the Galactic Council. As a small minority, the Skeld didn't have the power to have the strongest opinions, nor did they have the strength. However, Alara and the Alliance fleet were a beacon of influence amongst all of the smaller civilizations in the galaxy. They strategized that to succeed, they needed to band together and be a unified power. By the end of their walk, Lyra was finally confident in their strategy and success. As their preparations for the next trial commenced, the bond of friendship between Lyra and Alara deepened. The trials has ended, it would still take a month to get ready. She asked more about Earth, and Alara spoke to her about the oceans, the mountains and even the stars that hung so brightly there. And Alara heard about the intricacies of being the heir to a dynasty, as well as the responsibility that fell on her to uphold her planet to ensure its safety. They became inseparable, spending hours discussing everything from their homeworlds and families to their hopes and dreams for the future. They taught each other about their cultures, their beliefs, and their unique ways of seeing the universe. Lyra marveled at Alara's strength, her courage, and her unwavering commitment to justice. Alara, in turn, was inspired by Lyra's intelligence, her grace, and her deep connection to the natural world. As their connection grew, the differences between them seemed to fade into insignificance. The Earthling captain and the Skald princess, from 2 vastly different worlds, had found common ground in their shared humanity, and their shared desire to create a better future for the galaxy. The transport doors hissed open, revealing Lyra silhouetted against the harsh glare of the conclave's artificial suns. The Grand Assembly Hall, once a source of trepidation, now felt strangely familiar, a stage upon which she was ready to play her part. Gone was the hesitant ambassador who had arrived days before, replaced by a Skald princess radiating newfound confidence and resolve. The hall had fallen silent, the murmur of alien conversations replaced by a hushed anticipation. All eyes were on her. Lyra could still see a lot of people snickering and looking down upon her small frame, their expressions a mix of condescension, indifference, and a hint of curiosity. But she also noticed those who had once looked at her the same now seemed to nod to her, showing respect and gratitude. This change empowered her and let her finally feel confident. She walked with purpose, her footsteps echoing across the vast chamber. Though her frame remained slight, a palpable aura of strength and defiance seemed to emanate from her, drawing the attention of even the most jaded delegates. Alara and Eris followed close behind, a silent testament to the unwavering support they offered. Reaching the central podium, Lyra paused, taking a deep breath to center herself. The memories of the trials, the challenges she had overcome, flooded her mind, filling her with a sense of purpose she had never known before. She was no longer just representing the Skald, she was speaking for all those who had been silenced, overlooked, and underestimated. Honored delegates of the Galactic Conclave, Lyra began, her voice clear and resonant, cutting through the silence of the hall. I stand before you not as a representative of a small, insignificant system, but as a voice for all those who have been told they do not matter, were told that they aren't worth anything. The Skald may not possess the vast fleets of the Kthar Empire, or the technological prowess of the Cygnus Collective, but we possess something far more valuable: resilience, ingenuity, and a deep respect for life in all its forms. Her gaze swept across the assembly, meeting the eyes of every delegate, challenging them to see beyond the surface, to look beyond the labels and prejudices that divided them. The galaxy is a tapestry woven from countless threads, she continued, her voice rising with passion. Each thread, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, contributes to the beauty and strength of the whole. To tear out a thread, to silence a voice, is to diminish us all. These memories steeled Lyra's nerves as she continued her address. She spoke of the Skalda's history, their struggles, their triumphs, their deep connection to the natural world, and their unwavering commitment to peace. She spoke of their potential, their ingenuity, and their unique perspective that could enrich the galaxy. She also was not afraid to speak the truth and criticize even her own kind in her system. I challenge to treat all civilizations to show some respect. Every civilization is important in their own right, and each civilization deserves a life to survive. We should not be looking at who is more powerful but which are the most innovative and creative. She spoke with such honesty and from her core, so much that everyone couldn't help but look at the princess and acknowledge and be awed. Lyra concluded her speech, her voice filled with unwavering conviction. I ask you not for pity, not for favors, but for recognition. Recognize the Skald as equals, as valuable contributors to this galaxy. Give us a chance to prove what we are capable of. The assembly hall remained silent for a long moment, all of the ambassadors and soldiers thinking about the speech, and deciding about what to do with it. Then, the applause began, hesitant at first, but quickly swelling into a thunderous ovation that shook the very foundations of the conclave. The impact of Lyra's speech was immediate and profound. The atmosphere within the galactic conclave shifted palpably, the air heavy with a newfound sense of possibility and change. There were still those who clung to their prejudices, those who saw the Skald as nothing more than a footnote in the grand scheme of galactic politics. But their voices were now drowned out by a chorus of support, a rising tide of goodwill that threatened to overturn the established order. Most important, many members were deeply changed by what Lyra said. They were all different species and had come from different environments, but each of them were moved by the words she shared. Some even stepped forward to discuss potential avenues of support, or even alliances. But perhaps the most significant development was a change in the dynamics between the Earth Alliance and the Kthar Empire. While Zargith continued to sneer and threaten, some of the more pragmatic members of his delegation began to explore the possibility of a trade agreement with the Skald, seeing the potential benefits of tapping into their unique resources and technologies. The winds are shifting, Ambassador, Alara told Eris one evening, as they strolled through the conclave gardens, now a place of relative tranquility and acceptance. Your words have planted a seed of change, and it is beginning to take root. Eris smiled, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the alien flora. It is all thanks to you, Captain, he said. Without your help, I would have never had the opportunity to speak my truth. Alara's smile faded slightly, a shadow of concern crossing her face. Do not underestimate yourself, Ambassador. You are the one who has the courage and the vision to lead your people. I am merely a catalyst, a facilitator. We've all been underestimated at some point in our lives, Alara added. But the newfound hope and goodwill within the conclave were fragile, built upon a foundation of shifting alliances and competing interests. The winds of change had begun to blow, but they were not yet strong enough to weather the storm that was brewing on the horizon. News reached Lyra and Alara that High Commander Zargith had, privately, sent ships to take out what they needed from his planet. If not, then he was to cause as much chaos as possible. As Alara began investigating, she also found out some alarming information of several delegates, and members of the High Council was planning some sabotage acts in the conclave. One of the delegates, that was particularly close to Alara herself, was suddenly found to be on the payroll of the Empire. This led to her heart sink to her chest. All this, after what happened? Alara responded. The situation was growing more treacherous by the hour. Someone within the highest ranks of the Alliance was working against them. She and Lyra knew they could trust no one, which would lead to further and possible terrible situations occurring. This is worse than I imagined, Alara said gravely, studying the decrypted message on her holopad. Zargoth isn't just trying to annex the Skald system. He's trying to destabilize the entire Alliance. We cannot let him succeed, Lyra replied, her voice filled with steel. If the Alliance falls, the Skald, and countless other systems, will be at his mercy. They knew what they had to do. They had to expose Zargoth's conspiracy, to rally the forces of good within the Alliance, and to prevent a galactic war. But they were facing a powerful and ruthless enemy, one who had allies in the highest places. There must be a way, there must. But as she pondered, as if an act of God, she heard what she had wanted the most all her life. There was a way she could make it. It would be high risk, but she thought she would have a chance to do so. Alara. Lyra had spoken. I may have a plan. This sets the stage for an explosive confrontation, a desperate race against time, and a final showdown between the forces of peace and tyranny. The weight of the revelations crashing down upon them pressed down heavily on the Skald delegation. The glittering facade of the galactic conclave had shattered, revealing the brutal realities of interstellar power. The whispers and sneers, once mere annoyances, now seemed like sinister omens. Within the confines of their Spartan chambers, Lyra paced restlessly, her face etched with worry. The holographic projections of Skald's binary star system seemed to mock her, a reminder of the fragile beauty she was sworn to protect. We are walking a knife's edge, Alara, Lyra said, her voice strained. If I push Zargoth too hard, he will strike, and Skald will be defenseless. But if I do nothing, he will take our galaxy anyway. They will just kill us, and take our land, I am afraid. Alara listened intently, her expression a mask of thoughtful concentration. She understood the immense pressure Lyra was under, the impossible choice she had to make. The skilled pilot understood that the best course of action was to prepare for war. We cannot afford to underestimate them. I have seen what they can do. This moment set the tone for the chapter. For the first time Lyra started to show her resolve. Eris, his small hands clasped tightly together, looked from Lyra to Alara. What do we do, Captain? How can we protect Skald from such a powerful enemy? Alara knew that there was no easy answer, no single path to salvation. This was a situation that required a delicate balance of diplomacy, strategy, and if necessary, force. We have to be prepared for war, said Alara as all eyes turned on her. But the question isn't how can we hold off this powerful empire, but will others come and fight as well? With that in the silence, it allowed for the plan to move forward. They all knew that what lay before them is treacherous, and only with a careful balance would they make the best decisions. Alara looked at Lyra. There will need to be people here that you can trust who have our backs. I am asking you for more patience. It would be too risky to put so many people into such danger, but with no choice they made it so. Lyra, despite her earlier hesitation, was decisive. For so long her people were pushed down, what choice does she really have? It was a decision made for her, and now she would make others in the Alliance listen. She will speak with words and fight with the strength of their beliefs. She would use each of her skills to get what was necessary. As the Skald were ready for this, she was the Skald and she would not back down. Eris, though hesitant, gave in, trusting the leadership of his daughter. The next several days were a blur of clandestine meetings and covert operations. Alara utilized the Alliance fleet's resources to gather intelligence on Zargoth's plans and identified potential allies among the smaller, overlooked systems. Lyra, with her newfound confidence and charisma, began to weave a web of alliances, reaching out to those who shared her vision of a galaxy built on cooperation and mutual respect. As the alliance grew, the Kthar Empire's influence within the conclave began to wane. Delegates who had once cowered before Zargith now dared to challenge his authority, emboldened by the growing movement of support for the Skald. Zargith, however, was not one to back down easily. "This is a turning point, Captain," Eris said, his voice filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "If we succeed, we can create a galaxy where strength and kindness can coexist, but if we fail—" Elara knew that the consequences of failure were dire. But she refused to give in to fear. She and Lyra had come too far, had risked too much. They would not back down now. The night before the final council meeting, Lyra stood on the balcony of her chambers, gazing out at the shimmering tapestry of the city. The twin moons cast long, ethereal shadows across the landscape, painting the alien architecture in hues of silver and black. "It has never been clearer than now," she said to Elara, as the captain stood at her side. "The galaxy cannot be changed, not as long as it is run with the same mentality." "You cannot have such thoughts, Lyra," Elara said. "Because of this you have earned many allies. You cannot say all that we did was for nothing." It seemed, however, like the weight of everything was finally getting to her. The pressure, the threats, the constant fear of failure, it was all threatening to overwhelm her. Elara put a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Look at me, Lyra. You are not alone in this fight. You have my support, Eris's support, and the support of countless others throughout the galaxy. You are not just fighting for the Skald, but for something bigger, something more important." Elara had been a person that Lyra started to confide in about the fears and hardships that were ahead. That she had never felt such emotion when speaking with someone, even family. She had never been as honest, and the more she had spoken, the more she knew. And it was only right that they had chosen each other. Elara and Lyra spent the last few hours before the main conference discussing what their plan was, and what they should and shouldn't do when they begin the meeting with Zargith. As dawn approached, and the horizon began to bleed with the fiery hues of the approaching suns, Lyra stood before the mirror, her reflection staring back with an unsettling intensity. The royal robes of silver and indigo felt heavier than usual, the iridescent crystals of her crown pressing against her temples. For a fleeting moment, doubt gnawed at her. Was she truly ready for what lay ahead? Was she strong enough to bear the burden of her people's future? "You can do this, Lyra," Eris's voice echoed from behind. She looked back at the sight. Lyra and Eris exchanged a look of comfort. He still wore the same old robe and wore the same gentle look. She could do this. Steeling herself, Lyra straightened her shoulders, a newfound resolve hardening her features. She was Skald. She was a leader. And she would face whatever the galaxy threw at her, with courage, with wisdom, and with the unwavering support of those who stood beside her. "It is time, Father," she said, her voice ringing with newfound conviction. "Let us show them what we are made of." The first moments went by with tension. The delegate from all of the major planets gave their voices, sharing all of the opinions they have. But it was all leading to nowhere. The planets that would want the Skald to have power would be too few, and the Skald would need to have a powerful backing to keep its position. Zargith scoffed at the notion of Skelna having influence. "We have sat by politely and listened. I will not take any more insult towards my people, for it is not who I am." When it seemed as though they would lose the power, Elara had stood up. "High Council," Elara said, her voice clear and strong, instantly commanding attention. "I request a moment to speak on behalf of the Skald Galaxy System." A collective sigh rippled through the assembly, but the council president, a wise and impartial representative from the neutral Althean collective, nodded in approval. "Very well, Captain Vance," the president said. "You may proceed." Elara stepped forward, her gaze sweeping across the assembly. She spoke of the Alliance fleet's commitment to peace and justice, the importance of protecting smaller civilizations, and the invaluable contributions that the Skald could make to the galaxy. "It is clear that the Skald have something to prove," Elara concluded. "And I believe that they are more than capable of doing so. Therefore, I propose that the Alliance fleet commit resources to supporting the Skald Galaxy System, to help them develop their infrastructure, train their defenses, and share their unique knowledge with the rest of the galaxy. Her words were met with a mix of approval and skepticism. But this time, there was a new respect in the air, a willingness to consider the Scald's case. Zargith, his eyes burning with barely suppressed rage, rose to his feet. "This is madness!" he roared. "Are you truly willing to squander Alliance resources on a backwater system that has nothing to offer but empty promises?" Alara met his gaze without flinching. "With all due respect, High Commander," she said, "I believe the Scald have much more to offer than you realize. And I am confident that, with our support, they will prove to be a valuable asset to the Alliance." As soon as Alara had stepped down, Zargith strode on up. "High Council," he said. He used all of his charismatic charm and silver tongue to dissuade and threaten the council members. At this point, Marcus and Lyra knew that it would be hard to win the fight alone, so this was when she did it. Before the council could vote, the intercom system began to play out in the council, showing that Cathar ships and soldiers were invading Scald territory. "I was worried this might happen." Lyra calmly stepped up onto the podium. "Members of the High Council, what does that mean for you? Does it mean nothing? We gave you everything we have, our technology to heal and repair ships, and now you are looking to kill us all. What is that?" Lyra turned to Zargith. "I will not stand idly by to let our people be killed. I will fight to my very last breath to protect the people that I love." To her surprise, her own security team approached the stand as well to block any attack. Her actions showed others that there were many out there were not to be underestimated. The other council members voted in Lyra's favor. The victory came at a great cost with such influence in the council. It would put them at a clear disadvantage. That evening Lyra spoke with Alara, after what seemed like a lifetime. "Thank you for everything, Alara. It's all thanks to you." She beamed. "We have so much more ahead to plan. This alliance has now caused people to be in a position to trust humans. Your action that you have done tonight will now ripple all across the star, and for the people, for every culture, but this was never meant to be some easy thing. You still have so much to do." Lyra nodded, knowing that this was only the beginning. For weeks after the decision, everything was fine. The Council and the ships of the Alliance fleet agreed to protect her. When Lyra next visited the city, he had the chance to see Marcus, and he greeted her with a warm smile. He held her hand tight and congratulated her. While she was happy that she was going, she spoke softly with Marcus. "It all seems too good to be true." Marcus frowned. "I will look around. If there is anyone that I can trust, it's definitely within the fleet." As she turned around to look at Marcus, a gunshot was heard. With lightning fast reflexes, Marcus pushed Lyra out of the way, just to see that it was a good friend of his who had shot the crossbow. "I am sorry, Marcus," the man said in a trance. "Our hand has been betrayed to us. I never wanted to shoot at you. There have been too many things going on. My team has been working undercover, and we found the source." That evening, as they investigated, it turns out it was some delegates had long signed treaties for other planets, and did not like how Lyra has came through and upset this relationship. With his friends dead, she was left as one of the most vulnerable out there. She had made the choice to change the future of her kind. Now, there was no turning back. This would now change the life of everyone.